in the forms of excessive litter and graffiti. As supervisor, what creative solutions and changes will you sponsor or endorse that will bring us open outdoor space and a clean neighborhood for our families, merchants, and visitors to enjoy? Candidate Pang.
Well, I have talked to quite a few people. That is really what the important problem with neighborhoods. I just want to tell you that my headquarters sitting on an empty storefront. There's so many empty storefronts in this area, in Chinatown, North Beach. You know, art is very important. Why do we think graffiti is something that is a no-no? Why not? Think about graffiti is an art form. You may say, well, how are we going to do that? Because we don't give our youngsters the creativity to express our creativity. And I think this is what needed is compassion, caring, and we have to really nurture the younger generation to love our environment, to have a creative way to express ourselves, not graffiti. But, you know, look at that. There is one nice wall on Pacific. An artist actually did a really nice wall that is Jim Dong from Kearney Street Workshop. What's the difference? You see graffiti art and real art. We have to really look into it and see if we can make it graffiti into an art.
Thank you, Candidate Pang. Candidate Jefferson will be followed by Candidate Chu.
Thank you. I would like to talk about cleaning up the city. I think to myself every day when I call 311, when I walk up the steps and see garbage and see people, all sorts of things that I don't even care to discuss. 311 is a great program. The biggest problem I think we have in the city is that we need to educate people that we will not stand for garbage in the streets. I think that people need to take responsibility. Merchants need to take responsibility. I think that I can see, I keep getting this flash of a bus with signs, just pick it up. I mean, I think that people just either don't know any better or they don't care because they think, well, what's the difference? Somebody's going to pick it up. So that is in regard to, I think that's something that we can actually do at a low cost to get people to actually take pride in the city. We don't even have 1 million people that live in this city. There's no reason why we should have the streets as dirty as they are in some areas. In regards to open space, I think we need to preserve what we have. Obviously, San Francisco is chock-a-block with buildings. I think we also need to make sure that when there are new developments, that open space is actually created within the developments. Thank you.
Thank you, Candidate Jefferson. It's going to be Candidate Chu, followed by
Mr. Gaffner.
San Francisco is world famous for many things, including our incredibly dirty streets. I have in recent years, taken things into my own hands, along with activists from Middle Polk Neighborhood Association. Once a month, Lower Polk neighbors, Middle Polk neighbors, we literally take to the streets and we clean our streets because the city is not doing that job for us. I think the next supervisor, and if I'm elected to that position, I will apply enormous pressure on the Department of Public Works to make sure that as they spend their tens of millions of dollars on street cleaning, that it is effective and that it is accountable to our neighborhood so we know exactly who is cleaning what, when, and where, and that it happens in a smart way. With regards to beautification, we live in the densest neighborhoods outside of Manhattan, but I do think there are several opportunities for us to have open space. First, in our alleyways. We have underutilized alleyways that could really be used by the communities of every neighborhood in our district as places where people can congregate. The spaces within blocks. You know, we all live on buildings that face streets, but in the middle of every block, there are often open spaces that are underutilized. And I want to figure out ways for blocks of neighbors to use that as spaces so that our families and all of the residents that are living in our very crowded city can actually enjoy that space.
Great. Thank you, Candidate Chu. Candidate Gantner is going to be followed by
Harold Brown.
My platform is safe, clean, green streets for a livable city. DPW is understaffed just like the police are. I would like to see an additional 70 workers. I'd like to see workers assigned block routes. We need 3 times the number of steamers that we have today. We need maybe a dozen more drivers. In other words, we need to get more people onto the streets. I will tell you this, that I'm dedicated to open space and beautification. My grandmother, Dorothy Erskine, founded the Green Belt Alliance. I'm working with Lawrence Ferlinghetti in creating a plaza in North Beach. I'm becoming an expert on that kind of street closure. I want to see planted medians, bulb outs, pocket parks, widening of sidewalks. All these things will contribute to beautification of our neighborhood. We need a lot of money to do it, and we're going to have to somehow find it in the city budget, and that's going to be the biggest challenge of all.
Thank you, Candidate Gantner. It's going to be Candidate Brown now, followed by
Mr. D'Annunzio.
Candidate Brown.
Oh, that was Gantner? Sorry, Tony, I can't see you down there. The United States government gave you the solution of how to clean your streets, but greed got in the way. The developers decided they wanted Treasure Island. When the United States government started decommissioning these bases, the number one use that they required you to put them to was to alleviate homelessness. There's plenty of barracks over there for, if you moved all of the homeless facilities and the soup kitchens to Treasure Island, it would clean up your streets ASAP, period. And you've got the absolute legal and responsibility to do that. But Treasure Island is being taken over by developers for money, money, money. That's what's happening there. I'm going to agree with, I spent 5 years as a special education teacher. I worked with the biggest gangsters in San Francisco, and they were real taggers. And I'm going to agree with Wilma Pang here. What we did was we started doing graffiti murals. And Lord, those kids could do magnificently beautiful works. I'd like to see 1,000 graffiti murals around town where you can't stop them. But it will work. It will absolutely work. But your problem with the streets being filthy are people laying down on them. I'm way to the right of anybody on quality of life crimes. Trust me. You're not helping anybody letting them lay in the street.
Thank you, Candidate Brown. Now, Candidate D'Annunzio is going to be followed by
Mr. Aliotto.
I'm on the board of North Beach Neighbors, and in recent years I've been very active with the Friends of Golden Gateway and the Barbary Coast Association. And clearly I think we're all in agreement that, just as Tony Gantner pointed out, we don't have enough police, we don't have enough people working for Department of Public Works that can help keep these streets clean. So one of the first priorities I would have, and I would hope any supervisor would have, is to make sure we have enough people on the job being able to do that type of cleaning. Now, the other thing, someone brought up homelessness. Clearly, homelessness ties into another part of panhandling, and panhandling having to do with maybe things on the street that we don't want. So one of the things we've got to do is to continue work on supportive housing to get people off streets into supportive housing with effective case management, and that would be very helpful in the issue of beautification. Clearly also, we talk about open space, we talk about traffic congestion and greening. Any supervisor worth his or her salt is going to have to be focused totally on the whole idea of open space, and that calls for, again, proper community input on zoning and planning so that we don't have congestion in regard to both building and traffic. Thank you.
Thank you, Candidate. Candidate Aliotto will be followed by
Denise McCarthy.
Candidate Aliotto.
Thank you. There are two parts to this question. The first is open spaces, and what would I do to increase them? And then second, what would I do to help keep the streets as clean as possible? Let me answer them in that order. First, I am the founder or co-founding member of One Atmosphere. This is an environmental awareness group located here in San Francisco, dedicated to, among other things, increasing awareness of environmental issues in San Francisco. One of those issues is the lack of open spaces. I am currently working along with members of the Friends of Joe DiMaggio Park in North Beach to do what we can to find a funding source to create what I think could become one of the jewel parks in this district, and that's over on Lombard, just north of Washington Square. I also support Piazza St. Francis. This is the piazza that my Aunt Angela Alioto is currently spearheading, just located on Vallejo Street at Columbus. I think that those types of spaces we should support wholeheartedly. But the question then is, how do we pay for them? And that's where the second part of this question is, or my answer, regarding cleanliness. Just the other day, I was walking down Broadway and stepped on a syringe. Not 2 blocks from, not just a couple blocks from here. The Broadway Tunnel Beautification Project has been tabled. The $400,000 has been removed from the budget. The solution, and the question is, what creative solution? The solutions must be done on a neighborhood basis. If there is a problem with our corners, I coalesce with our neighbors and develop things like community benefit districts, and that's what I would support as a supervisor of District 3. Thank you.
Thank you, Candidate Alioto. Candidate McCarthy will be followed by
Mr. Busalaki, and finally, Ms. Chang.
District 3 is underserved in terms of open space and parks. We have a very dense population and we do not have enough open space. So we need to continually work to find opportunities to create new open space areas. We also need to work to preserve and update and upkeep our current wonderful parks that we do have. Helen Wills here off Polk Street is one of the brand new parks that draws people from all around the area and has been done in a great way. The planning process going on at Joe DiMaggio is another process that I think will result in a wonderful park also. One of the things we need to do with parks is that we need to create public-private partnerships. There is no way anymore that Rec and Park can be expected to come up with money to redo these parks and actually to maintain them the way they should. I believe there are ways. We have successfully raised money in various ways around parks already, and we could do more of that. In terms of cleanliness, I think that what we need to do is break up the district into smaller areas, use the neighborhood associations, build those together with DPW, and set out a block-by-block education and cleaning process. I believe that would go a long way to help the problem, which is horrendous.
Thank you, Candidate McCarthy. Candidate Busalaki, and then finally Candidate Chang.
I'd like to raise a red flag for you all. The people in Russian Hill right now are going to be faced with the PUC selling the reservoir. And if we don't do something with that reservoir or go to our supervisors and demand to keep it an open space, they're going to build condominiums on there. I'm a real estate broker, and I'm against that. Our open space is very important for each and every one of us. So, first of all, as a community, we need to stay together. Thank God for your neighborhood groups, because those are our front line for any of these types of things to put a stop to. As far as trash on the street, when's the last time you walked down the street, had a piece of paper in your hand and found a garbage can? It's that simple. There's no garbage cans on the corners. If we start putting garbage cans on the corners and get the DPW to come and clean them, there will be less garbage on the streets. There's a good place to start, very inexpensive.
Thank you, Candidate Busalaki. Candidate Chang.
Thank you. My commitment to open space as the president of the Treasure Island Development Authority, and after an extensive public process of the last 3 years, I have made sure that over 50% of the island remains open space. It will be the best park, the greatest park for all San Francisco to visit, and I can't wait to see that day when that happens. How do we create more open space? Open space is a value that I take equally, just like affordable housing. If we can mandate affordable housing as a percentage in every development proposals, we should be able to do the same for open space. As your elected supervisor, if you would trust me with your vote, I will review the legislation to make sure that we will have the kind of legislation that would include open space as one of the community benefits. But community benefits span many things. It doesn't only mean childcare and other things, or art galleries. Open space is also a very critical community benefit. In terms of cleanliness, I just happened to talk to DPW today. Do you know that from January to June 16, today's June 16, the highest call for service in District 3 is for street cleaning. There are 2,138 cases of calls to DPW. As your supervisor, I would make sure that you have adequate budget to continue the corridor program that is currently in place. In a year, the second phase of the corridor program for cleaning of Polk Street will end, and I will make sure that there will be adequate resources for that. And I will also encourage looking at creative ways of funding, such as forming a CBD.
Thank you, Candidate Chen. Okay, we're going to go on to question 4, and this revolves around small businesses. The first 2 respondents will be...
Number 1 will be Wilma Pang.
Candidate Pang, again.
Fix.
It's random. And number 2, other side of the table, Mr. Aliotto.
Okay, so here's the question. San Francisco neighborhoods have been traditionally anchored by independent retail businesses. The bakery, shoe repair, stationery, and dry cleaners, for example. The list of retail service types in every neighborhood gets smaller every year due to the fact that independent retailers struggle against the influx of formula retail, high rents, and increasing cost of doing business in our city. Oftentimes, a liquor license becomes the ready solution for an empty storefront, robbing our neighborhoods of their diversity. As supervisor, what sort of new programs and legislation would you promote that would support our neighborhood serving small businesses? And Candidate Pang.
Okay, now I want to reroute the question. Do you know that in San Francisco, our #1 industry is tourism? Tourism brings in $8 billion. Has the Board of Supervisors done anything about it? Yes, small business is very critical. It will bring in lots of money to the treasury or to the coffers. My thing is, we need to really look into tourism to bring it, to strengthen this industry. Because with the arts, remember in North Beach back in the 50s, that the jazz musicians and bohemian were really the top attractions. In Chinatown, it is the cultural. We don't talk about that. This is small business. It will bring us income. Now, then I answer your question. What about the liquor license? What about the shoemakers moving out of the district because of the high rent? We have to help small business, not just talk about it, but really need to make some kind of incentive for them to be able to stay in the community.
Thank you, Candidate Pang. And now it'll be Candidate Aliotto, followed by
Mr. Busalaki.
Candidate Aliotto.
I have founded a small business and I've owned a small business, and as an attorney, I represent small, independent, family-owned businesses every day. That is what I do for a living. I understand how small businesses work. Currently, the current supervisor, Aaron Peskin, has proposed a piece of legislation which he has drafted, which would put, in some instances, very harsh limits on what types of businesses are permitted to come into certain commercial districts. He has the right idea, but the wrong approach. We have too often gone to what people should not do. Our legislation on this issue has focused on what small businesses should be prevented from doing. I support the formula retail ban in North Beach and in other areas throughout the city. However, I think that we need to couple these restrictions with firm tax incentives and other types of financial incentives for small businesses. The way I would do this is as follows. We would present a type of neighborhood serving business which would be defined through the legislation, and provide these companies with incentives, financial incentives, say for instance relief on their payroll tax or relief on other types of fees to allow those businesses to get up and running. Right now, if you walk up and down Columbus Avenue, there are 5 or 6 boarded up storefronts. I know that if I am able to pass this piece of legislation as your next supervisor, that I will do everything in my power to amend that situation.
Thank you, candidate. Candidate Busalaki, followed by
Denise McCarthy.
I was a delegate to the White House with Jimmy Carter on the Conference on Small Business because of my business expertise. I've been in business since my 20s. I'm still in business today. What I see as far as small businesses are concerned is nothing goes down. Taxes, utilities, rents, product, everything goes up. And I don't see the City Hall doing very much to alleviate all of those bills that keep going up. The next thing that's coming up is the carbon footprint that they're going to have to pay for. That's another little added incentive for them to come here in San Francisco. The developers built shopping malls for one purpose. It was parking and convenience. We need to keep parking for these people or get better transportation to the shops in San Francisco. I say that during peak hours, we get rid of the cars on the street, but we must find a place for them, The buses will move quickly, and while the buses are moving, you have a bike lane there as well.
Thank you, Candidate Busalaki. Candidate McCarthy, followed by
David Chu.
I strongly support small businesses in this district. I believe strong businesses are a draw both for the tourists and for folks living here. They are part of the vitality of our neighborhood commercial serving corridors. I think that a lot of work has to be done working with property owners. Over and over, one hears about a business going out because of rents that are escalating, and then you see the storefront sitting there empty. We've all seen that time after time. There has to be some way to give an incentive to not only to the small businesses, but somehow to deal with property owners so that they understand also what the issue around keeping the businesses in place and how that affects their property values, how it affects the economics of the city, and how it affects all of the residents there. I would strongly support incentives on both sides. Thank you.
Thank you, Candidate McCarthy. We're going to have Candidate Chu, followed by
Claudine Chang.
8 years ago, I founded my small business that I run. It's a technology company here in the district. I've also served on the Small Business Commission here in San Francisco for the past few years. And when I walk up and down the merchant corridors, our small business owners are hurting. We need to do so much as a city to make it easier for them to do business, or we're going to lose them. I have 4 proposals that I have been working on in recent years to do this. First, I wrote legislation that is now law that requires city government to come up with a plan to streamline the 15